Hello all, welcome to the web application pen testing course. Now in this video, we look a little bit more in depth into HTTP methods and something called verb tampering. Now if you recall in the HTTP header which we had seen in Wireshark, the very first thing was the request method, and we talked about one of the possibilities being get. So the question arises, what really are request methods? So very simply put, a request method is an operation which you can run on a resource on the web server. So we've looked at get, and get is typically only used for information retrieval. Though of course, a lot of people also use it to pass parameters and change things in databases and things like that. But typically it is just for information retrieval, which does not lead to any change in the backend. Then you have post, and post pretty much comes in when you have a lot more data to send. Let's say a file upload or maybe a form with many fields is pretty much what you would use. Post is pretty much what you would use with it, right? So in get, all the parameters get passed in the URL, while in post, it is in the message body. Now, pretty much get and post is what you would see probably for 99.99 recurring percent of all the web traffic out there. However, there are other request methods also available in the HTTP standard. These include options, head, trace, put, delete, and a couple of others. Now, options is very interesting because for a given URI, options gives us the list of all supported methods, right? So this pretty much tells us what all the URI can support, get, post, maybe, put, delete, and things like that. Now, let's go ahead and look at a demonstration of options. So the problem with options is not every web server has it enabled anymore, right? So let me show you an example. So we use curl, we can say options, and we can pass it the URL, let's say, let's just probably take securitydtube.net. And what you would see is that the output which we received was method not allowed. You can clearly see that, right? Which means the options method is not supported by the securitydtube.net web server, which pretty much is the Google front-end web server, right? Rather than saying not supported, I'd pretty much say it's not allowed. Maybe they've configured the server in such a way that it may work for certain intranets and things like that. However, having said that, there are also servers which continue to allow options. Now, honestly, options is really just giving the attacker or the pen tester a list of all the allowed methods on the URI which we are mentioning, right? This at times, depending on what the web server may be offering, can lead to the attacker knowing different options it supports, and probably then he can launch further interesting attacks. And that's why I guess a lot of these servers have options turned off. Now, interestingly, while I was trying to find you an example, what I figured is that my own server, which is really on shared hosting for vivekramachandran.com with DreamHost, had options turned on. And I'd like to insist, this isn't a security vulnerability, right? I mean, at best, I could probably call it a little bit of more information disclosure, right? And if you notice, in this case, we received a 200 OK, which is great. And the allowed options include get, head, post, or rather the allowed methods include get, head, post, and options itself. Fantastic, right? Now, if you're watching this video much later, please keep in mind that maybe vivekramachandran.com may change, right? So don't blame me if you don't find it responding to options anymore. You can also play with Apache and all of that, and maybe Nginx or JBoss and all of that, and see how to probably turn on all the request methods, right, in the config, so that you can locally simulate this in case you cannot readily find a host online. So now coming back, so options is good, allows us to enumerate all the different request methods which are supported by the web server for the given URI. Now, one of the other methods we talked about after that was head. Now, head is very interesting. It's pretty much telling the web server, give me the response if I had done a GET request for the same URI, but do not include anything in the message body. So all the web server does is the response is identical as it would for a GET request minus the message body, which means all the HTTP headers are the only thing which is pretty much included, right? So let me show you a demo of head. So I can actually go back here, and first let me issue a GET for vivekramachandran.com. And this is going to give us a lot of HTML, right? It's a really old website, probably one of the first I started a really long time back. I do not maintain it anymore. So if you find any little vulnerability, you could report it to me, so I don't know when I'd fix it. Okay, so what we see is 200 OK, and you have all of these little HTTP tags in there, or header values rather, and after that you have the entire HTML file. Now for the same URL, if we go ahead and issue a head, what you would find is that pretty much all we get is the HTTP response header as output, which is the entire thing here, and this is supposed to be identical as what would have been received if we had done a GET. And if you notice, after that we do not receive any message body, no HTML, no data in it, right? So this is the purpose of head. Now head unfortunately had some history of security risks. The first of which was actually authentication bypass. Now, unusually, it was actually possible in a lot of web server configs to specifically enforce authentication for certain request methods. So you could, for example, configure older versions of JBoss and tell it that, hey, if there is going to be a GET or a POST for the admin directory, ensure authentication happens and only authenticated users are allowed. Now, unfortunately, rather than the config interpreting this as only GET and POST are allowed, what the config ended up doing is that only for GET and POST, it went ahead and enabled authentication, and when you did head, it basically allowed you to bypass the authentication, right? So you guys have the slides for download just below the video. And here is a link from Fishnet Security on the JBoss JMX console auth bypass, which actually ended up using the head request to go ahead and bypass it. And really, I think the whole class of vulnerabilities which deals with the security risks and all of that of method tampering is what is called HTTP verb tampering. And I think the guys at Aspect Security came out with the very first detailed analysis. And as usual, I think Jeremiah Grossman has a very good read in his blog, which I've also linked to, about HTTP verb tampering and really the security risks and all that which comes with it. Honestly, in today's world, you may not find servers implementing head and allowing and all that a bit too much, because you can pretty much see this is dated back to 2008. But there are still old servers lying around, and you really don't know what you can encounter during a pen test. So this is a good thing to know about. We will also discuss the other method. Most important one probably is trace. And trace is interesting in the sense that it just echoes back the client's request back just to the client. And this is used, interestingly, in an attack called XST, which we will look at in a later video. And of course, after that, as I mentioned, put would go ahead and store the specific resource which you have in the URI, and delete can even delete it. Honestly, as dangerous as put and delete look like, in most cases, you would not find them enabled on production servers anymore. So it's super, super rare that you may end up finding put and delete being enabled, right? So hold on to trace. We're going to look at trace later on. At the end of this video, I'll leave you with a quick exercise. We had used curl in order to do the options and the head request and all of that. Now our best friends, right? I call them best friends because we use them so much. Nmap and Metasploit. Nmap has NSC scripts which can do verb tampering, and Metasploit has a module. So here is what I'd like to do as a little student exercise. Find the Nmap NSC scripts which are responsible, do the demo, and also find the Metasploit module and try it out as well. Now, if you go ahead and run this and you're feeling a little, enthusiastic, you could even shoot a short video of both these demos and post it on securitytube.net. And I'll have the admin team approve it, right? Just for fun. I mean, I don't need you to kind of do voice and all of that stuff. Just a quick demo. If you can, would be fantastic. If not, still great. Okay, guys, that's all for this video. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.